I'm seeing here that the UI is messed up when it doesn't, obviously scale properly when the window is at different sizes. So that's not good for the next box. One way we can at least deal with the location is to do a sort of world to screen transition for the location of the preview box. So the preview quad is going to have a location, and then the UI will read that location and then center this element around it. So let's try doing that. I haven't had much success trying to move this box around on screen using various methods to get the proper location projected from the world to the screen. It's always not at the right position, slightly off somehow. So I'm sure there's a way to do it properly this way, but I think a way to handle this more dynamically is to do what we're doing here with this widget component on the object. So we'll just add a widget component to the game mode and put it on screen at the proper location, so that way it'll always be there. The game mode doesn't have any other models, so we can try adding a widget component here, and we want to place it at preview quad location. So at begin play, instead of doing all this fancy footwork, I will delete all this. We won't need this initialize next box position function in the UI HUD, so I'll delete that in a moment. But what we're going to do is set our widget location, set world location to this location here, index 0. So this is the location where we're spawning preview quad 0. This is where we want our widget to be. And this widget is going to be in screen space, and we need to make a new UI HUD that is our next box. Instead of using UI HUD, rather we want to make a new widget blueprint. And I'm just going to call it next box, and it's going to be the box and text here. So I can try copying this, maybe that'll be easy, into this canvas like so, and same with the text. But first I'm going to center this like so, and with the text we'll copy that as well. And center that. Offset it a little bit in the Y. And we'll see how that goes. If we now attach that, so we'll delete these two objects. And we need to remove this function entirely. Don't need it. And now in the game mode, when we set this widget's location, set it to take this blueprint. It's probably going to be sized wrong or in the wrong location, but I'm just going to go ahead and see what that looks like now if I play. It seems to be in the right location now, which is nice. The grid is invisible. That's not so nice. What happened to the grid? Let's see. I think I'm not spawning the grid is the main problem there. So I just need to reconnect that. And now we'll see if the next box moves to the proper location If I have a different window size like this, it scales relative to the window size, which is maybe not ideal, but certainly better than nothing. So, I think that's probably a pretty good solution to it. It's in the right location regardless of aspect ratio and window size. So at this point, I really feel like the game is basically complete. We could add more features like, a high score table, enter your name to the high score list, and we could save that so it persists between times that the game is run. But we could also just not do that. At this point, this series has gone on, I think, long enough, and perhaps in the future we could do more series about similar games and expand this one, convert it to C++, and do all sorts of other things with it. But I think I'll make one more video in this series. I want to maybe polish up a few more things, add a bit more style and polish to the game. We could add sound effects, but that's more subjective than some other things that I've done, that what sounds good, and it's the issue of finding the sound effects that are easy to reuse so you can follow along. So that can be a challenge to you, to add sound effects if you want to make it more engaging. Find music and sound effects that you're able to use and add those to your project. But I think we'll go ahead and leave it here for now. I will do one more video. I want to give a bit more feedback when the player scores points with a combo. So what I want to have happen is, I'll go ahead and play it in the editor so I can pause it more easily. So I want the score that you get from an individual match to show up on screen. So we'll have points appear when the blocks get cleared. Points will spawn like on screen and sort of float up as if they're in the world, and then they'll disappear. And those points will reflect the score that you got added to your points here. So like that would say 10, and if you had a larger match and it had a combo, then those would be tracked too, and it'd say 160. It could even have like a plus signs, like plus 10, plus 160, so you know that those are the points you're getting for that match that just got cleared. And that gives you a bit more feedback, so you don't have to glance up here to see how many points you got. You'll see the points you got from each match. And we could even get really fancy and make the numbers themselves get larger as the points they represent get larger. But for now, we'll probably make them all the same size, and that should be pretty cool. And after that, I think we'll call it there. So yeah, we'll have one more bonus video. There's even, I didn't want to bring this up before I was sure if I would do it or not, but there's something we're not doing if we want to more closely replicate Lumines on PSP. That game has special blocks that have a little green gem in them, and when you place one of those special blocks, it highlights all the other blocks that are adjacent along the cardinal directions of the same color. So for instance, let's try to find a good example. If you place some blocks and things are getting a bit messy and you want to try to clear more blocks than you normally could, say if I had a special block on this orange block, a special gem here, when I placed it here and I moved it down to this location, the gem that was in this block would then cause all of these orange blocks except this one to become quote-unquote matched, and then when the timer bar comes across, it'll treat them as highlighted blocks and clear them, but they won't be part of a match, but you still get points for clearing them, and they still get deleted, and then the blocks will fall as expected. So everything we have in place should work with it. We just need to create new logic to generate the gem blocks and then turn them into have a way to sort of recursively check all the neighbors along the cardinal directions and highlight them. So I think we can do that. And that will maybe add a little bit more exciting gameplay. And then we'll add the score showing up on top of the highlighted blocks. And from there, I think we'll truly end the series. So maybe got 1 or 2 more videos coming after this one. My first thought would be to make this score element that's going to appear on top of the mashed blocks. My first thought would be to make it part of the HUD, but I want to avoid running into the same issue I ran into with the next box being placed on the wrong part of the screen. So I'm going to do what I did with the next box and put it in the game mode as another widget component. So I will rename this one to next box widget component. And so that'll be more descriptive here, next box widget component. And I'll then make another component and call it match score widget component. Displays the score added by the most recent match on top of the central location where the cleared highlighted blocks were located. That tooltip is not really actually shown anywhere unless it's shown here. Oh, there we go, yeah. We'll go ahead and make the blueprint for that widget. So I'll just call it UI score match score text. So it's just going to be a text box centered in the widget. Size to content. I'll try 48. We'll see if it needs to be bigger or smaller. Maybe 72. And I'll go ahead and try using this, see what it looks like, just so that it's slightly differentiated from the other text. And if I make an outline, well, we'll see what it looks like if it's just white. That might be good. And this value is going to be received from the game mode when we update our score. This value that we'll be adding to our current score is the value we want to display on this widget. So I will make a new variable. I can go ahead and make it a scoring variable, I suppose. It's going to be match score widget value. And I'll call this the value to display on the match score widget component. So I will set this in this function. Now we could run into an issue here where we have multiple matches happening in quick succession and we want the score to show up for both of them. So if that ends up being an issue, we can change this to have 2 or 3 widgets in like an array and only update the oldest one so that the new ones have a chance to play their animations out. But we'll see if this is an issue or not. It shouldn't be too hard to change and make a function here that just, updates the oldest one. And we'll have 3 of them here, so that won't be an issue if we need to do that. But if the animation is quick, it's not going to be too often when there's multiple matches. Well, we'll see. I'll just put 10 in here as a default value. But it's going to be bound to this function, which first we need to get the game mode on construction. So on construction for this widget, we get the game mode and make a reference variable. Set that here after we cast it to this type. And then in our function here, we use our game mode and we get that value variable. And then just update our text to be that value. And when we will need to run a function here, do a custom event here. It's play fade animation. So what we want to have happen is we'll make an animation here, slide up and fade out. So when the highlighted blocks get cleared and the player's score increases, we're going to move the widget component to the location where those highlighted blocks disappeared, and then we're going to reset this animation and play it from the beginning every time, where it appears at the location and then kind of flies upwards and disappears over time. So that's a pretty common effect in a lot of games where the score shows up, like a number will appear on screen and then it'll fly up and away. So we'll go ahead and do a little animation to make that happen. We just need to get our text and then use some different tracks here for transform. We just want to translate from the starting location to on the y-axis we'll go up by, I don't know, 200. And then over that same amount of time, as it starts to move up after a while, we want it to fade out. So perhaps around here we will add another track for the opacity so that it'll start out at 1. Let me close this here. And then here it'll be 0. So when the animation plays, it look like this, where it flies up and fades out. Oh, it has to be 1 from the beginning. So it starts out at 1 and stays 1 until it gets to about here, and then it starts to fade out. That might be a little too fast in 1 second and fade out in 4/10 of a second, so we can slow that down if we need to. I'm going to just change this to say score value. And that should be all we need here. So now we just need to call this custom event from the game mode whenever our score increases. And all this event is going to do is play that animation. So instead, let me get the reference to the animation by just saying get slide up and fade out, and then play this animation. Let's try maybe half that speed. It might be too slow now, but we'll see. When the player score increases, what we need to do is, before we just start destroying our highlighted blocks, we need to find the central location of all the highlighted blocks. So that's not too hard to do. The timer bar has that array. So let's find out where we're using that. So here we're doing a for each loop, and before we go ahead and destroy those actors, I'm going to find the central location here. And they have utility function that makes that really simple to do. You just call this function and you get the average location of all the actors in the array. Couldn't be simpler. We want to use this location to set the game mode's variable. So the game mode is going to have a variable for match score widget location, and that's just going to be the vector for its location. And it'll get set here. To this value. And then whenever we increment our score, we'll go ahead and make a new function here called update score widget component. And this will take in that score increase value. There's too many functions here. I need to close all these. Okay, so when we update our score here, instead of just doing this directly, we'll just call a function, pass this in. It says new param because I haven't compiled yet, so let me compile first. And now do this. And we'll set this inside of the function just to make this look a little simpler on the outside. So update that value and then set the position of this widget component to this variable value. And let's go ahead and make sure we're not doing any overlaps or anything. Same with this other component, doesn't need to overlap anything. And after we set this, we need to play the animation. So in order to call that function on this widget, we need to use the function getUserWidgetObject, and then cast this to the proper blueprint class tag. And now we can call the play fade animation event. And that should do everything we need to do. I may have missed a step. We'll see if it works at all. So every time we clear some highlighted blocks, we should get that appearing on screen. And we did not, so maybe I didn't actually ever set this widget component to have any class on it. Yeah, that would be part of the problem. I never set the class here. And I'm going to put this in the screen space, not world space. So let's see if that works now. We need to make it initially invisible. Right now it's just at the world origin. It's kind of funny, but that's a mistake, so I'll fix that. But let's see if it moves to the right location. Yes, it did move to the right location. It's a little big actually. I'll probably shrink it down. So let's make sure it's initially invisible by just setting the initial opacity of the element to 0. And then let's make it a little smaller too, so not 72, let's try 60, or maybe even 48 could probably be big enough. So let's see how that looks now. So yeah, it looks pretty good. It gives a bit more feedback to the player when they make a match, lets them know that they got a certain number of points. I think the outline is actually too thick. It starts to look a little weird on certain numbers, like the 90. It looked a bit weird, so I'll probably make that thinner. And maybe make it like a light gray or dark gray outline instead of black, so it shows up better against the background. So let's try, actually let's try something, let's try green instead of white. Like a nice, not too harsh of a green, like a blue-green color. And then the outline can be like a very light, very dark gray. And, oh yeah, I was going to make the border thinner, the outline. So let's try like 6 instead of 12. Even that's pretty thick. Maybe 4? Yeah, that's probably better. That looks a bit sickly, actually, that color of gray. Maybe orange. Oh, that's even worse. Maybe purple just to contrast with the green. Again, I'm no graphic designer. You might think that looks wretched. Also, I just realized I have had flux on this whole time. Great. Okay, that's flux off now, and maybe you can tell. Maybe that looks even worse, I don't know, but let's see. I still don't really like the way when the blur fades out. I feel like the whole grid gets moved by a couple pixels, and that bugs me more than it probably should. I just got a bunch of solid cubes in a row. So yeah, I think I like that color and size. Make it a little bit more green though, because it's less green than I thought. And I think that'll do it for that feature. And now we're going to add the special blocks that let you clear the same color in the whole contiguous region. I think I'm also going to try speeding up the timer bar a little bit and the drop speed so that things drop faster, so you're forced to make quicker decisions. So I'll just speed the timer bar up a little bit. So from 200 to maybe 250. I think 300 would be too fast. And then the drop speed for the time between automatic falls, I'll make this like 0.6. That might be too fast. I could try 0.8. It was 1.5 before, which was just way too slow. This is a little too fast. This is like when you have played a round of Lumines for a few minutes and the speed gradually speeds up. This is where you come in at like the 5-minute mark. So yeah, maybe I'll try 0.8. With the balance we have in the game right now, I don't think you really need the special blocks to help you out, because it's already pretty easy. Maybe I'm a little biased since I've played like 1,000 hours of Lumines, so I wouldn't say I'm super good at the game, but I know how to keep the game going basically forever until it goes really, really fast and I just can't keep up with it, or I just get bored and stop playing. But I don't think there's really that much challenge in our game right now. It's fun. I like playing it just because I like Lumines, but it's not really that hard. And that's where maybe the getting the right balance of rarity for the different block types, that's important to make it more challenging. Like, you can't get solid blocks or L shapes too often, because those make it easy to clean up your mistakes. But I think really Lumines is just pretty easy once you learn the right strategies. You just apply those same strategies over and over again until you get really unlucky or just make a mistake. But yeah, like this would be a case where I'd want to use a green block right here to get rid of those ones or something like that. So yeah, there's definitely a case where you'd want to use the special gem blocks. So we'll go ahead and make those now.